For the artists, for the passionate. Welcome to the Adventures Elsewhere podcast. Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to the Adventures Elsewhere podcast. I am your host Jade Black, and today I'm doing something a little different. I'm talking about the first draft. Before beginning it, what the sort of knowledge I go in with, physically how I write it, how I keep myself on track. We're going full ham today. So, because this is a bit more of a craft-based episode, I feel the need to say that, as always, this podcast isn't dedicated to writing advice. This is me talking about my craft, my process, what works for me, and maybe in amongst all this, you'll find some really helpful stuff. That's the deal. So, the first draft. Now, I handwrite. I'm a masochist. But at this point, with how many books I've written, it's important for me to be able to see which notebook is which at a glance. So, just the plain black notebook isn't too helpful to me anymore. I like to choose an outside cover that has some relevance to what I'm writing, or if I get given notebooks that look a bit too similar to something else, I might put a couple of stickers on them so I can clearly delineate what they are. So I have a bullet journal, and that has a couple of little gold flower stickers on the spine, so I can see when it's on my shelf that that's what it is, and it's really, really helpful. And on the inside cover, that's where I have all my notes. So the very first thing that I'll have on the top left corner is the working title of the project or the MC's name, depending on when I pick this notebook up. So yeah, generally speaking, I set out which notebooks I'm going to use for what really quite far in advance. And on this inside cover, I'll also have other preliminary knowledge that I have, which is usually just the MC's full names, that's first name and last name, their age at the start and at the end, if it matters that they change age, because some of them don't if they take place across a short amount of time. Other notes I have on the inside cover, I have a very, very crudely drawn map of the continent. As in, I would never show this to anyone, it's that bad. And for Shadow on the Snow in particular, I actually had a sort of zoomed in portion of the map where the Hjukai-South border is, so I could use that to sort of see where everyone was and keep track of the exact locations everyone was in, because that became a lot more important in that project. And I'll also make notes as I go in this inside cover spread about bits I've missed once I realise that I'm missing bits, and potentially overused words. This is usually when I'm doing a 1.1 draft, but I'll get into that a bit later. Really, the only other bit of preliminary knowledge that I ever have is roughly where I want to start, but that I usually end up starting bit too early. So you might be wondering, why do I put myself through handwriting 70 to 80,000 words, if not more? Why do I do that to myself? Well, the main thing is thinking time. It takes longer to physically write out a word than it does to type it. It is slower. And that means that I pay more attention to exactly what I'm writing. And that matters a lot for me. Like, the difference in how much I have to edit when I've typed something versus when I've handwritten something is chalk and cheese. and I'm not being funny, the lazy drafting, when I draft digitally, is horrendous. As in, I might as well just rewrite the entire thing at that point. And I do wonder if this is why I don't rewrite, is because I found a process that is that much more thorough, and with that thinking time that comes with, okay, well, you're going to keep writing the sentence and all that. With the extra thinking time that comes with it, you do realise, oh wait, hang on, but that ties back into this thing, or that point of world building, or hang on, didn't someone say? And it means you don't miss stuff, or at least I don't. But also, digital drafting, for me, it's very easy to get distracted, and it's another one of the reasons I have a very crappily drawn map on the inside cover, is so I don't have to pick up my phone to look at what the map is, or open my laptop and see what the map is. It's just there, and it's just about good enough that I know where everything is, and, distances and all that, so, that's fine. If I have that on my phone and all that, I'm immediately going to get distracted opening Pinterest or Twitter or Discord or whatever. So keeping things on paper really helps with that. But also with the digital drafting, I want to press all the buttons. I want to be clever in the most pretentious way possible, which is maybe not surprising if you've been around here for a while. But I want to italicize things for a specific reason, or bold things for a specific reason, or change the text color, or do this, or do that, and it'll be really, really clever, and it's not, mate, it's just distracting, and it's bad, and it means that, but at least the way I think it can be done well, all of these things, but the way that I do it when I get all button pressy is not. It's not good. It just means that every other line is in a different typeface or different colour or something, and it's just really distracting at best, and it all ends up being cut and then re-edited, and it's a mess. So yeah, digital drafting don't work for me. And post Snakebite, I have had to think a bit more carefully about handwriting, because this was in a very old episode of the podcast now. I mentioned that towards the end of Snakebite, because so much of the material was crossover with Mr. Nakagami, and I could have the Mr. Nakagami document open while drafting Snakebite, it was just really quick, really easy to do. So I just wrote way too much. I wrote 15,000 words in 2 days by hand, and my wrist was already tired before that because I've been writing so fast before that, because I always speed up towards the end, and it gave me a wrist injury that is still, probably about a year later, it's still not 100%. Still. Don't get me wrong, it's a hell of a lot better, but it's not 100%, I can tell you that now. So, I make sure that, actually, yeah, I might be writing a lot today, but I really gotta be careful not to do what I did then and fuck up my wrist again, because I basically couldn't really use my hand properly for a good couple weeks. So, yeah, don't do that. And this is actually something that's very pertinent at the moment, because as of recording this, I finished Shadow on the Snow 2-3 days ago. And when I realised on the day, and some of you might remember when this goes out, that I was doing live updates on Twitter, that when I realised where I was like, hang on, I've got 2-3 scenes left to write, so I'm just gonna do it today. And that sort of pushed my limit of how much I like to write in one go, and it did feel a bit funny in the wrist and doing exercises, and part of the reason I did live updates was to give my wrist breaks between scenes. That was a very, very deliberate move. It wasn't just marketing and hype. But the thing with that was I knew there was no chance I was going to sleep until it was done because I was that damn close. There was no way. So I thought, well, I can either be up for 8 hours and be exhausted and annoyed in the morning and have no focus to do what I need to do, or I can stay up until like 1:30, get this done, and then just move on. And well, the ending was a whole experience in a way that I've never quite had before. So that didn't quite work out how I wanted, but that might be an episode for another time. If the idea of me talking about what it's like to finish different drafts is interesting to you, because no two drafts are the same on there, let me know. So how do I go about actually writing this draft? Besides, yeah, I've talked about that I do it by hand, but what does that mean? What do I actually do? Well, I keep things very linear. I write strictly in order. I do not jump around at all, because that has only ever resulted in editing headaches for me. I've done it a couple of times. One time I didn't even finish the book, one time I did, and it was literal years of editing hell, and I'm still not convinced it's 100% where I want it. I would like to do another read through and another couple of passes just to make sure before that hands off to Jess and Mandy. But the reason I do this linear, I talk about, but it's an editing headache. Okay, well, let's talk about what I mean by an editing headache. If I draft linear, it's much easier for me to keep all the threads in my head. I know what started, what's finished, what I need to come back to, because that's been quiet for a while. If you just jump all the way to the end of the book and write some scenes towards the end, you don't have all that background knowledge there. At least I don't, because I'm a hardcore pantser. If you are a hardcore plotter, I don't think this matters as much necessarily at all, depending on how hardcore you go with it. But for me, being a hardcore pantser and I know nothing, I gotta keep track of those threads as they appear and make sure that, as many as I want are tied off and all of those things. And granted, there will be bits that are missed in edits. There will be bits that are missed, and, that's where making notes on the 1.1 draft and everything comes in, but it's an order of magnitude or 3 more reliable to do it this way for me. And the other really, really key thing for me is character consistency. Because obviously characters are going to develop over the course of 70, 80k. And some of them don't change very much. It's kind of the point with Haru that, he's just the sweet, lovely man all the way throughout, and politics doesn't corrupt him. But with other characters, they change quite a lot. I mean, Hanzo's as good an example as any. When he's a young man, he's very loud about his anger. He shouts at people, he's not afraid to. But due to not necessarily the reasons you would expect, yes, I'm skirting around spoilers, he channels that anger very, very differently, and it's quite a hard switch. And if you don't know the couple of events in the middle that make him do that, you just end up writing him wrong in the second half. And this has been a massive problem for me in other books, that I would just end up writing people completely wrong. And then the story would be wrong because they wouldn't react like that anymore, that wouldn't set off that chain of events, and it just led to an inordinate number of rewrites and editing, and it just wasn't worth it, really, because I did find writing out of order was faster, but I don't know if it was by that much, to be honest. And with the speed that I write now and the process that I've managed to sort of streamline and tailor and all that, and obviously it has to change a bit by project and how people talk and everything. But I write faster now in order than I did previously out of order, and it makes a whole lot more sense. So to me, speed of writing shouldn't. For me, having that dictate my process was the wrong move, because the more familiar you get with the process that works best for you, generally speaking, the faster you'll get at it. And the higher quality your first draft will be. And with all of this, keeping the threads going throughout, and I have an insanely good memory. Anybody who's ever met me in person, who's ever talked on the phone with me, has known me for a long time, even on social media, and I'll be like, oh yeah, 2 years ago you tweeted this thing and I remembered that. You'll know I have a really good memory. So, from beginning to end of the book, I will remember a lot of little details, and all of these get callbacks and sprinkled in the first draft because I remember it. And foreshadowing also happens very naturally. I mean, plenty of it by accident, don't we all do that? But writing in order really helps me get those details and all that foreshadowing and everything in very naturally. And as I've touched on earlier, it just makes editing a whole lot easier, especially where you can make notes as you go, because Shinichi decided he didn't want to tell me any of his backstory for 50k, and that wasn't going to be a problem, sure, because it was never going to come up. Spoiler alert, it did. So, yeah, that's going to be fun to figure out later. But with the editing notes that go on the inside cover, a lot of this happens throughout the drafting process for me. So my notes for Shadow on the Snow, not even all of those are written down. I've got a couple written down, so there's a little bit of character detail that I could do with working into a bit more. And there are a few scenes that I don't need. I wrote them, I don't think they add much, if anything. I might change my mind on that, but those are the main story paths issues that you can have in your head while drafting, and then when you go through the 1.1 draft, you keep an eye out for that and think, oh wait, hang on, this is a good place to add the character detail in, or yeah, actually, I'm just not going to bother typing up the scene because I just don't need it. That's what the 1.1 draft is for me. It's just a streamlined, annotated version of the first draft. And keeping a copy of that 1.1 draft has been so useful when you think, oh, I don't need that scene, and oh wait, yeah, shit, I do. And it's also why I keep all my notebooks, because not every scene makes it into the 1.1 draft. But then you think, wasn't there something here I missed? Keep the notebook, you don't miss it. So one thing I've mentioned on this podcast a few times is not knowing what genre things are, especially when I'm first drafting them. And, with some things that's obvious. Shadow on the Snow, it's all about the war. We know it's going to be a military thriller. That is what it is. But how do I, once I've sort of figured out what a genre is, or if I know what a genre is, figuring out halfway through, how do I bring that into my writing? For me, a lot of this is about tone. A lot of this is about how things are described, what's described, and in what detail. And a lot of this, in first person, as I say in I think just about all of my craft-based episodes, it is very dependent on the character and what the character notices. But a lot of the tone is about, the specific words that you used. So in something like a military thriller like Shadow on the Snow, there are a lot of words that are adjacent to or associated with death used just all the time, because it is such a big theme and a part of the genre. It's just the sort of words. So political thrillers, what I've tended to do is use words that are slightly more specific, often a bit longer, and it's all to get that genre tone in there. It does make a difference. There's those little details that bring that extra immersion. And when it comes to descriptions, I can already feel Editor Jade glaring at me saying, "What do you mean you do descriptions first draft?" Yeah, I'm pretty sure I haven't described Shinichi once. It's genuinely a recurring problem of mine to just not describe things. I'm getting there, but it is one of the main things I look out for is tone of description. Not just the descriptions, but the tone of them is very important to me. And a lot of this does get straightened out in line edits. Line edits are really where things come together, for me, personally. So, with all of this said, all of this stuff in my head, all of these notes, all of these little details, how do I keep focus? Well, I'm not one of those people that writes in silence. I don't like it. That doesn't help me. Silence sets my brain going off with someone going, hey, have you heard this thing? When I'm trying to settle down and get into a session, that is not helpful. So, playlists have always been a thing. I did an episode on that a long time ago now. But, yeah, music in the background, it helps. It's a big deal for me, particularly with certain types of scenes. Lyrics or no lyrics, don't care. I'm absolutely fine either way, it does not affect me. With Shadow on the Snow, I found in particular the playlists were really useful for action scenes, and the more tense scenes, it was really, really useful for that in particular. Because it's being that bit more immersed for me. And here's this is a weird one that is a very recent development, and this I assumed would be a one-off with my anthology piece for Shadow Spark that's coming this summer, but no. This part of the process also made it into Shadow on the Snow's drafting. And this is going to sound categorically insane, playing video games at the same time as writing. And yeah, that is exactly what it sounds like. I write a couple of sentences, a couple of moves on the game, write a bit more, a couple more moves on the game. It works. I don't know what to tell you. You write a few sentences and then you think, what's the exact thing I want to write next? A couple moves on the game, it's come to you. I'm telling you, it's categorically insane, I know, but it works. So, the games I found for this, with the anthology piece, which is entitled Count Stars, for what it's worth, I found a game that I actually bought because of the concept of the anthology piece, which, makes sense, called Catch the Stars, which is on Switch and probably PC, but I'm a Switch gamer, so yeah. And it's a very cute, very ambient, very pretty little puzzle game. Surprise, me and puzzle games. But yeah, absolutely recommend that. The one that I ended up playing while drafting Shadow on the Snow, and I think this is going to be a returning feature for the determined ones because it nails some of the vibes so well. And this is a game that a fair few of you have probably heard of because it blew up a while ago. It's called Inscription. And it's not a puzzle game, it's a strategy game. And it's very clever, it's very interesting, there's a lot of... It's very animal focused, or at least phase 1 is. I'm not going to give spoilers for that game because it is mind-bending, genuinely, it's fantastic, I can't recommend it enough. But I found that a lot of the ambient music, which is fabulous by the way, really nails a lot of the complex feelings and undertones in the determined ones, Also, a lot of the mechanics and aesthetics, in a weird way, also seem to tie into it, and there's cross-inspiration, and just, I don't know, it's the immersion, getting immersed in what you're doing, getting immersed in that draft, for me, is just absolutely key. And I've talked before sporadically, and actually sporadically, I have a whole episode about tea. Yes, I like my tea. I'm a Brit, not Australian, as some people might think. I don't understand where it comes from, but it's a comment I get all the time. I'm British. I like my tea. And there are specific teas that I drink to help me get in the zone, and it works. You know, the combination of having music, tea, and a notebook that has everything I need in it, no distractions, works. Tea, a good vibey game, and notebook with everything I need in it. That level of immersion where it's just all there, it's super easy, it's super clear. That's it. That's the key for me. That said, it doesn't prevent me getting stuck, particularly at my usual points of like roughly 10k, roughly 30k, maybe at 50k, though that one's, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't prevent it, and I think getting stuck is a natural part of the process. You see some vocal pantsers saying that if you get stuck, you're not pantsing right. I fundamentally disagree with that, because everybody needs some fucking thinking time. At some point, you know, a whole big dramatic thing happens. You've got 5 threads already somewhere, probably all like 2 or 3 or 4 of them are minor, but you know, they're all there, and character development, and then a whole big dramatic deal happens, and a whole another slew of threads comes at you. That's a bit overwhelming. You need time to think about everything, let everything catch up to you, keep track of everything, and listen to exactly what happened and in what order. And thinking time is creative time. It is a natural part of the process, whether you're writing, whether you're making art, whether you're in game dev, whether you're making music. Thinking time will come into it at points. It doesn't necessarily mean you're stuck, or maybe you are, and you just need some time to think about exactly what to do next. That is part of it. Another thing that does really help me with getting stuck, sort of an amount of preventative measure, an amount of, again, this is immersive thinking. Get a playlist on, you draw something, while you think about it, immersion. It is the shit. There is no substitute, in my mind, there is no substitute for being immersed in the world that you're making. Nothing will help you more than that. And art is a huge thing for me. Like, I have so much art of all my projects that I've done. I mean, besides Penstemon, just because Cody is a pain in the ass to draw, but that is something I want to fix. You know, I have folders. I have a big art folder, and within the exports I have subfolders for different things and for all my different projects. For Mr. Nakagami, I have like 60 plus pieces of art. And that is all about... Now, sometimes you just want to draw a scene because it's cute, or, you know, just stuck in your mind, so you want to draw it, or you want to draw Haru because it just helps you truly visualize who he is, and the silhouette portraits are kind of just a big thing. But that all helps. And again, looking at pictures for inspiration, you know, Pinterest boards and art and all that, that's all there for a reason. The only thing I can really say, and this is writing advice, this comment is explicitly writing advice. If you are stuck, don't panic. It's normal. It happens. Panicking is not going to help. You know, I don't find, generally, that stepping away is the right thing to do. I find that, immersing myself more is the thing that helps. But that said, one of the things I did do is I dropped Beneath the Moon to draft Shadow on the Snow, because I was stuck on Beneath the Moon, and I came to the realisation that Shadow on the Snow was going much better. I was drafting them at the same time at first, and I felt that actually part of the reason I'm stuck, one of the main reasons I'm stuck in Beneath the Moon, is that I need more information. So, draft the entirety of Shadow on the Snow, then I've got all of the major information I need from the first draft. Yeah, there are a couple of details missing, but that's more about Shinichi's story than what Helga's going to know and, going forward and all of that. So now I have the information I need, and the thought of going back to Beneath the Moon, yeah, of course I can do that. I know a whole load of things that are going to happen now. Is that part of the compendium curse? Probably. But panicking, that ain't it. Getting immersed, arming yourself with knowledge, maybe you need to take some time out to do some world building you weren't expecting, or draw some things, commission other people to draw things for you if you're not artistically inclined, make a new playlist. That's all productive at the end of the day. Panicking is not. That's about all I have to say for beginning the first draft, pre-first draft, and writing the first draft. Like I said at the somewhat beginning of this episode, if you want to hear more about me talking about endings of drafts and what that feels like, what I do after that point, let me know. That is on my radar. That is something that I'm considering doing. If you'd like to hear it, let me know. There are many places you can do that. You can leave a comment on this video, or you can hit me up on my socials. If you're looking for me elsewhere, you're probably looking for the home of the podcast. If you're here, that is Instagram. I'm Jade_Black21 on there. You'll get advance notice of what the episode for the week is, soundbite teaser reels, little other things as and when I experiment with them. There's a whole lot going on there, so hit me up on Instagram, Jade_Black21. If you like the idea of having live updates about my writing, if that is cool to you and you know potentially the exact moment I finish a draft, Twitter is the place for that, JadeBlack21. And here's a new one for you. If you like my art and you want to hear more about my world building, hit me up on Pinterest. I'm Jade_Black21 on there. This is a place where you'll get an amount of exclusive art or early access art, potentially. Stuff will be posted on there before on other platforms, depending on exactly what it is. And there is world building information on there that you can't really get elsewhere. So if you like that, that's your thing. That's where if you like the sound of that, that's the place to go. That said, if and when I have major announcements, that will go across all platforms, so follow what you want to follow. You're never going to miss out on anything big. If you are a fellow writer and you're published or you're well on the way, please do get in touch. That is via email, jade42black@gmail.com. Indie and self-pub, you are the people I want to hear from. Couple of things to note: there's no age category requirement, genre requirement, doesn't have to be a novel, doesn't have to be new. Whatever you've got, bring it in, let's see what we can do. There's a list of things I want to know in the description first. Please read that and include the information in your initial contact email. I don't want to have to give automatic no's if and when I get inundated, because that's no good for anybody. That is all I have for now. So until next time, you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a like. It helps the channel a lot. Intro and outro music by me. Copyright J Black 2024.